Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So on my channel, I've been sharing a lot of vlogs and some informational videos and some tips that I've learned along the way on my husband and I's 2-year infertility journey. I even shared a 2-part vlog of our first attempt at IVF, which was a super interesting experience. So if you want to go back and look through some of my older videos from a couple months ago, you can definitely check that out. But today's video is probably going to be one of the hardest videos I'll ever have to make because I am going to talk about both of my miscarriage experiences. Initially, I was thinking I was only going to share the most recent one, but I think that there is a reason why I should share both of them. And I think you'll understand why as you watch this video. As I just stated, I've had 2 miscarriages. My first miscarriage was back when I was 26 years old, and I was in my first marriage, and I kind of blocked it out of my memory because that whole experience, the marriage failing, the miscarriage, all of it was just a really hard time for me. So I kind of don't even revisit that very often. But now that I just had a second miscarriage a couple months ago, I think back, it was in October, with my husband, and I'm now 32, which so they were, what, 6 years apart. So I think having this second miscarriage has made me reflect back to the first one and to remember things about the first one that I kind of blocked out of my memory. I really never spent a lot of time talking about it or dealing with the first one because it was just so much going on at that time in my life. It was literally the hardest season of my life. So when I left that season, I just left it all there, and I didn't really carry it over or talk about it or bring it into the new season that God has brought me to. But now that I've experienced a second miscarriage, I feel like it's important to talk about. Like, it's not something you just brush to the side or forget about. It's something that happened. It's something that was painful, it was traumatic, and it was hard, and I don't want to pretend like it didn't happen. So I'm going to tell the story of both miscarriages, and at the end I will share why I decided to share both stories in one video. My first miscarriage happened back in 2014. I believe it was like May or June of 2014. I was either 25 or I had just turned 26. I can't really remember. I think it might have been right after my 26th birthday. My ex-husband and I had been married for less than a year, probably about 7-8 months, when he asked me, was I ready to start trying to have a baby? And honestly, I've always wanted to be a mom, so when he asked me, I was like, sure, let's do this. Like, I was really excited to start the next phase because I already had the husband. Now it's time to add the baby, and the whole beautiful picture that I always imagined would be complete. So we tried for about 2 months, and the first month didn't get pregnant, but the second month I was pregnant. It was very easy, no problems. I was super excited because now I'm going to be a mom. So I started doing all the pregnancy things. Because I'm a photographer, I've always wanted to do an announcement shoot. So I'm like, yeah, we're going to do an announcement photo shoot. I had bought this sign that said bump ahead, like one of those road signs, and we were going to hold it, and I was going to be touching my belly, and it was going to be the cutest thing ever, right? So I remember I went to the doctor. I had an initial blood test, and they told me I was around like 7 weeks or so, I believe. So they scheduled me for an ultrasound, I want to say at the like 9-week mark, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly because, again, this was 6 years ago, and I made a huge effort to forget all the details because it was just a hard situation. So I remember doing the first doctor's appointment, and then I remember scheduling our photo shoot, our announcement photo shoot. And then one day, I think I was about 8 weeks, I was at the store. I think I was at Kohl's or something like that, and I was buying something, and I just remember feeling like there was moisture down there. And I was like, something doesn't feel right. So I went to the bathroom, and I saw blood. I immediately start panicking, like, oh my gosh, what is this? At that time, I didn't really understand what a miscarriage really was. I mean, I knew that it meant that your pregnancy wasn't going to continue, but I didn't really understand what all it entailed. And I really honestly don't think most people know what all a miscarriage entails, like how it happens, how hard it is, how painful it is. Like, people don't really know what that means. So I ran out of the store and I went to the car and I called my ex-husband and I told him I was bleeding. I called my mom and they were both telling me call my doctor immediately. I call my doctor. My doctor tells me to go to the hospital. She said, don't panic because it might not be what I think it might be, but just go to the doctor and find out. So that was the beginning of probably one of the worst days of my life. Definitely one of the worst days of my life. We went to the hospital. This hospital was just the worst. I can't even describe it any other way. Like, I feel like no one was concerned at all. Like, I didn't know what was going on with my body, and I think that was why it was so scary. I didn't know what was really about to happen. So I was bleeding a lot, and I was in the waiting room because they had me waiting there for like hours. I kid you not. It was at least 3 hours. I feel like I was sitting there just waiting to be seen. And during that 3-hour period, not only was I bleeding, but my uterus started contracting, because a miscarriage is basically a mini labor. Like, it's like your body is getting rid of the tissue, the sac, the baby, everything. It's getting rid of all of that. So it contracts like you're in labor. I'm not sure what labor pains feel like, but my doctor explained that that's pretty much what it was. So I'm sitting there in the waiting room for 3 hours-ish, somewhere in there. It might have been longer, who knows. And I'm crying, I'm scared, I'm bleeding. They don't offer me a pad or anything. I'm just sitting there like bleeding. Then I remember finally being called back. They take me to do an ultrasound. I had never done an ultrasound at this point. So they do the ultrasound where they try to see on top of the belly. They said it was too early, so they put the ultrasound wand inside, and they said they couldn't find anything. At this point, I'm pretty much convinced that I've had a miscarriage, but again, I had never had an ultrasound before, so I'm like, well, maybe it's too soon to see anything. I don't know. Like, I just have no understanding of any of this. I've never been pregnant before. This is all new to me. I remember they had me change into like the hospital gown. They drew my blood. They basically gave me a bracelet and put me in a bed. My ex-husband was there, and the doctor comes in and says, well, we can't see anything, maybe, but it might be too early in your pregnancy. But then asked me how far along was I supposed to be. And I said, I believe I'm 8 weeks. And so he said, well, your blood levels are indicating that you're not at 8 weeks. Like, they're not high enough to be 8 weeks. The doctor basically said one of two things is happening. Either I'm having a miscarriage, or I'm just not as far along as I think that I should be. And they weren't sure which one was happening. In my head, even though I'd never been through this before, and I'm not a doctor, I pretty much realized I was having a miscarriage, but the doctor could not even confirm it. So basically, they told me to come back in 2 days and do another blood test, and if the levels had went down even further, then I was for sure having a miscarriage. So they basically sent me home to play the waiting game of, am I having a miscarriage or not? The worst waiting game on the face of this freaking earth. I was literally distraught. I mean, I was crying and could not get out of bed. I probably didn't eat. I was in so much pain for 2 days and still wasn't sure what was happening. Again, I had told myself this is probably a miscarriage, but the doctor, I just don't understand why the doctor couldn't just tell me. Because I feel like they should have known. I'm sorry, like, as much blood as there was, as much like pain as I was in, it just didn't make sense for them to not say, yeah, we're 99% sure this is a miscarriage, instead of like giving me that little sliver of hope that, oh, maybe, just maybe, the baby's okay. Eventually, even before I went to go do the second blood test, I passed the baby, or the tissue, which I'm sorry if this is graphic, but honestly, I think that people are making miscarriages sound like this little disappearing act of a baby, and that is not what happens. Again, it's like having labor to get rid of this tissue and the sac and everything out of your body. I don't know why everybody thinks the baby just disappears and it's like, oh, okay, well, it is what it is. No, I went through a traumatic experience, and something you'll never forget. At the end of it, you don't even get what you normally get at the end of labor, which is a baby. So you're just left with this traumatic, scary, painful memory. So yeah, that's how that went down. I think one of the reasons that I try to kind of block that out of my memory is because not only did I go through the miscarriage, I was also dealing with my marriage falling apart simultaneously. So I kid you not, like the series of events and how they went down, it was so terrible and so painful that I just tried to kind of block it out. Basically what happened, my ex-husband asked me for a baby, and then 2 months later we found out we were pregnant. A week after I told him, I believe, I found out he was cheating. And then I want to say 2 or 3 weeks after that we had a miscarriage, and by October, so about 4 months later, I want to say, we were separated. So it was just such a like roller coaster. Not even roller coaster, because it wasn't no ups. Everything was just down, down, down. So I really couldn't even focus solely on how hurt I was that we lost our baby, because I was also mourning the loss of my marriage. And then to pile it on just a little bit more, at the time, I was working at the hospital taking photos of newborns. So literally taking photos of babies the day of or the day after they were born for their families, for the new moms there. And I don't even know how I got through that. Like, I don't even know how I did it. I would take a baby's pictures, and then I would go in the hallway at work, in the closet, and close the door and cry in the closet. Like, that was the only way that I could get through the day. Man, like, I don't even know how to explain how I managed that, because I wanted to quit every day. Like, every single day, I just wanted to not go in. I was also severely depressed, like in the middle of a deep, deep depression, because like I said, everything was crumbling around me. Everything that I wanted seemed to just be slipping away from me. So I was so depressed. I wasn't eating. I lost weight. Honestly, at one point, I didn't even want to live anymore. I was just tired of everything. I just didn't have the energy for anything anymore. So the only thing that kept me was God. Literally the only thing that kept me, because not that I was attempting to take my life. It wasn't to that degree, but I just didn't want to be here anymore. I couldn't fathom why I should stay on the earth when this was what life was. So that's what was happening then. And so a lot of why I kind of block out that first miscarriage is partly because I was so stressed during that time. Really, Mello? Mommy's recording. Mommy's recording. You want to say hi? Come here. My pup wants to say hi. You say hi? No. No. You say hi? Okay. Can I finish recording, please? Please? Okay. Get down. Go play. Sorry, guys. Anyway, so I kind of blocked that out of my memory because of how much stress I was under, and I always said, oh, well, God knew I wasn't going to stay with my ex-husband, and he knew how much stress I was under, and he knew that I didn't want to be a single mom. So God just knew that that was not the time to have a baby. So he just blocked it, and I'm grateful for it. Because actually, after a while, I did kind of feel grateful because, like I said, we ended up divorcing a year later. He's remarried. I'm remarried. We probably would not have been the best co-parents. I'm just being honest. I don't think that that would have been a good situation for us. So I kind of just chalked it up to like God knows best, and I'm glad we didn't go down that parenthood road together. So fast forward to 2017, I get remarried to my wonderful husband, Kim. He's awesome. The man I'm supposed to be with and should have married originally. Not that I knew him back then. It wasn't like that. But I'm just saying, if I would have waited on God, I wouldn't have had to go through the divorce in the first place. that's a story for another day. Anyway, so fast forward to 2017, we got married in October. We decided, because we were long distance, that we didn't want to have a baby right away. So we waited a year before we started trying. I've already talked about this in detail in another video, so you guys can really go back and watch that video if you want the entire story. But we found out we were dealing with infertility. So June of 2020, we won a fertility grant to get our first cycle of IVF paid for, which was really awesome. I'm going through this very quickly because I'm not explaining the full story. I am purposely fast forwarding to the part of our miscarriage because I already talked about this. So we did our first round of IVF last summer in July 2020, and we got a positive pregnancy test. Everything was looking good. I was super anxious though. I feel like I was starting to have a little bit of PTSD and anxiety from having a miscarriage prior to this, but I was determined to not let that take over. I was thinking positive. I was like, okay, God, I trust you. This is this is clearly you this time. This is what you want for my life. This is your will for my life. And I was super convinced. I would have never saw what was coming. Let's just say that. So we had an initial blood test that determined that I was pregnant. Then I had an ultrasound at 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and 7 weeks. The first one was to find out where the embryo implanted. The second one was to find the baby's heartbeat. They couldn't find it at six weeks. So I came back at 7 weeks. I was super anxious after that 6-week appointment when they couldn't find the heartbeat. I thought maybe something was wrong at that point. I was freaking out, but I had to really, really breathe and just pray on it and relax my mind. And they had me come back a week later. They did find a heartbeat. They couldn't hear it. It was still too early because I was only 7 weeks. But we saw the heartbeat. We saw the little flutter on the screen. And I was just convinced we are home free and we're good. Like I was good at that point. So after that point, the fertility doctors, they basically graduated me from the fertility clinic to go and see a regular OB. We opted to go to a birthing center instead of like a normal hospital doctor situation. I wanted to do a more natural birthing process, which I still want to do one day. I hope I have the opportunity to do that one day. So we had our initial appointment at the birthing center at 10 weeks. If you don't know anything about a birthing center is a more holistic, natural way of dealing with pregnancy and birth. And they don't do as many technical things as a normal OB or hospital would do, unless there's a problem. They do use technology. It's just they don't overuse technology, if that's the best way to describe it. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully you understand what I mean. So at my birthing center, they did not do an initial ultrasound at the first appointment. So I was 10 weeks. She basically felt inside of, like, I guess my cervix and down there, and she could feel the size of my uterus. And she said it felt like a 9.5 to 10 week uterus, which was good. So that's right around the time that I was. So that made sense. Then we went through a whole bunch of questions and a bunch of stuff, and they decided to try and find the baby's heartbeat with a Doppler because I was 10 weeks at the time. They said sometimes you can hear it on the Doppler. So she used the Doppler. She sat there for a few minutes, probably like 10 minutes, trying to find a heartbeat. And they said, no, it's fine. It's probably too early to hear the heartbeat. And that, to be quite honest, that was a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I'm like, okay, I know there was a heartbeat. Why can't you hear it? Why isn't it strong enough yet? I started having all these questions, but then I had to kind of like calm myself down. The nurse practitioner didn't seem too concerned. So I just told myself I had to just relax and have some faith. So I left my appointment, and later that week I was scheduled to go visit my sister in Chicago. My husband and I, we're stationed in Delaware because he's in the military, but I'm from Chicago. My whole family's out there. I had planned this trip to go to Chicago for my sister's 30th birthday and spend time with my family. I hadn't seen them all year because of COVID, which was so sucky. I'm used to seeing my family, even though I live out of town. I'm used to seeing them at least 3 or 4 times a year, and they come see me. It's just, we spend a lot of time together considering the fact that we don't live in the same state. So I flew home. We had a good time. My sister's birthday, she had a social distanced 30th birthday movie night in the backyard. It was so fun. I did her 30th birthday photos because I'm a photographer, if you didn't know that. And what happened was, I remember as soon as we got back from taking her 30th birthday photos, I went to the bathroom and I noticed there was blood. And I panicked. like immediately, because it was like I was back in 2014 all over again. Like it was like, oh my God, it's happening again. Like I panicked immediately, immediate tears, immediate, like almost can't breathe. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, God, no, not again. Like this can't be happening again. So I called my husband. Well, first I ran into the other room and told my mom because she was there. I called my husband on the phone and he's like, okay. He's like praying and he's like, it's okay. Let's just call the doctor. Just relax, be calm. There was no calm at this point. Like, I don't know how to be at this point after experiencing one miscarriage and now two. I don't know what calm is in that situation. Calm is like not a thing. Not for me. So I called the doctor. The doctor was like, if you don't feel any cramping and it's not a lot of blood, I wouldn't be concerned. Bleeding during pregnancy is not necessarily a bad thing. Just try to relax. And she said, if you feel like you need to go to the hospital, then go to the hospital. But she was like, I'm not telling you that I think it's necessary at this point. So I kind of contemplated. I was still panicky. I contemplated not going to the hospital. My mom kind of was like, you're probably fine. You don't necessarily need to go unless you think something's really wrong. My husband kind of said the same thing, just kind of like, okay, I'm praying. He was on YouTube, Google, trying to figure out, okay, reasons why women are bleeding at 10 weeks and all this stuff. And everybody's trying to keep me calm. So I said, okay, I'm going to be calm. I'm like, God, I trust you. I'm praying, literally praying like, okay, God. And it felt like for a minute, the bleeding slowed down. So I was like, okay, maybe we're fine. I laid down and attempted to go to sleep. And then for something told me, just get up, go check one more time. I got up to check one more time and it was a lot of blood, like a lot. And I was like, it was 1 a.m. I think, something like that. I told my mom, I was like, we're going to the hospital right now. I can't do this. I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I can't stay calm. I just can't. Let's just put it that way. So we went to the hospital and because it is COVID, I had to be basically dropped off. So I went to the door. They let her come to the point where they like put the blood pressure thing and did that, whatever. At that point, they were like, sorry, ma'am, you can't come back with her because of COVID. We can't have extra people here. So they took me back to the hospital bed, the emergency room bed, and they had me change into a gown. They did blood tests. They put me on an IV. I was just laying there watching TV. They said that because it was the middle of the night, nobody was there to actually do an ultrasound, so they had to call somebody in. So I had to pretty much wait for that. I waited an hour or two for that. So the person comes in and does my ultrasound. And wait, back up. First, my husband had called me. We were on FaceTime a couple times during the night because I know he wasn't sleeping either because he was here and I was in Chicago. And I know he was overwhelmed. So he was watching some girl's YouTube video, and the girl had said that when she was bleeding, but when she got to the hospital, the ultrasound tech kind of showed her the screen, was like, see, the baby's fine. It's just a little bit of bleeding. You're fine. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's what's going to happen. So I get back to get my ultrasound. So I go back to get my ultrasound, and that's not what happened. The lady first did one on the outside, then she used the wand, which I was kind of nervous about. And I was like, well, can I see anything? She was like, ma'am, I'm not permitted to show you what's on the screen. Only the doctor can talk to you about that. And that's when I realized this is not going well. Like, oh crap, like this really is happening. Because I know that if it's bad news, most likely they're not going to tell you. Like the ultrasound tech is not going to tell you bad news. If it was okay, there's a chance that they would not tell you. But if they see how panicked you are and there's not bad news and they see the baby, I know that they'll show you because I've been in that situation. You know what I'm saying? Like I've been in this situation before. I actually had an ultrasound the first time I had a miscarriage and they showed me the screen and said, hey, we can't find anything. But now this lady's like, no, I can't say anything. So that's when I got the first red flag. Like, okay, this is not going well. So I texted my husband. I was like, I don't have a good feeling. I was like, I think something's really wrong. I don't think this is going well. So, like, I hate this story. So I go back to the room and I'm watching TV and I'm just like praying, kind of like, okay, God, like, I need you to come through. Like, I need you to come through. Like, that's all I could really say. I was still crying. I was like freaking out. I was by myself. Like, in the room by myself. My husband's in a different state. My mom, they sent her home, and I was just here by myself. So I'm just like, I don't know. So the doctor, a different doctor actually comes back in the room, and it's a black woman, and she starts talking to me, and she was like, I heard you did IVF. I see that's on your chart, and blah, blah, blah. She's asking me questions, and I'm just sitting there with like my stomach in knots, like, what's going on? Why are you not just telling me that everything's okay or what? And so she was like, well, I just wanted to tell you, unfortunately, we can't find the baby's heartbeat. We see the sac, we see what looks to be the baby, but we don't have a heartbeat. And she was like, and we are about 95% sure that that means that you're about to miscarry. And I felt, at that moment, I really felt like my entire soul just left my body. Like, I felt like my chest sunk in. I felt like my oxygen was being cut off. I just couldn't believe that this was happening again. Like, I can't even describe like how that felt. Like, I felt like I had been like stabbed in the chest. Like, it just was this unexplainable pain that just shot through my body that I just couldn't believe it. And I also just couldn't believe that this was happening by myself. Like, I didn't have anybody there. Like, I had to do this by myself. And I couldn't understand why God would even let that happen. So the doctor was super nice, and I'm grateful that I had someone there with some compassion, and they actually cared. She shared with me that she actually had to do IVF, and on her third attempt, she ended up having a successful pregnancy and a beautiful baby that resulted. And she told me that she was so sorry, and she asked me, she was like, I mean, I know it's COVID, but she was like, we're wearing masks, but do you want a hug? And she hugged me, and I cried into her arms, which is very weird since I don't even know her name. But I am grateful that I had someone who was at least willing to be that for me, because I didn't have my husband or my mom or anyone in the room with me when I found out that after everything it took to get pregnant, that the baby was not going to live. It was literally, I don't even have words. I can't even explain. Like, it's a loss that you can't even explain. Like, I just sat there, like, thinking about all the shots that I took in my stomach and in my butt, all the pills that I took, all the praying, all the concern, all the surgery, everything that had to happen to get to that point for me to end up in a hospital room by myself, finding out that I'm having another miscarriage. Yeah, there's just no words to describe how much I was hurting in that moment. So I had to call my husband and tell him, and I think it really caught him off guard too, because he thought I was calling to have good news, but I was like literally screaming into the phone. Like, I was like, I couldn't even barely get the words out, and he was just like, he's like, I don't even know what to say. He told me later that he really wanted to get in the car and drive to Chicago, which is a 12-hour drive. But the problem was I had taken our more drivable car and left it at the airport for when I flew out to Chicago, and he had the Jeep that we have, which is old and has like over 200,000 miles on it. I wouldn't trust it going cross country. I know he wanted to get in the car and drive, but it just wasn't feasible. After I called him, I called my mom, and I told her she could just come get me. And I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm having another miscarriage, and just please come get me. And I just pretty much got off the phone. Like, I didn't really have anything else to say. I couldn't say anything else. Like, I don't know. I don't know. So I got in the car. She was still trying to be hopeful. She was like, well, they said that there's still a chance. There's still a chance. And I was just done at that point. Because, again, I feel like they say that stuff because there's been a 1 in a million person who they told were having a miscarriage and they really weren't. But in most situations, in most scenarios, that what they said is just the truth. You're having a miscarriage, and it's not to say I don't have faith, but it's just, let's call a spade a spade. Like that's the kind of person that I am. Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's not hold on to this hope that's gonna actually make this harder than it actually is. I have hope that the Lord is going to bless us with children, but I just, in that moment, I just felt like that was just like not real. Like we're just not wanting to face the music right now. So on the way home, she took me to go get some pads because you're gonna need them. It's a lot of bleeding. Again, I'm sorry for being graphic, but I am not going to sugarcoat this. I am not going to pretend like this baby just disappeared out of my belly. That's just not what happened. So we went home. I can't remember if it was, I think it was the next day. So I just kind of laid in bed all day, talked to my husband, cried to everyone, basically. And then I think it was that next night, I believe, I can't even remember. I think what happened was I was supposed to leave on like Monday or Tuesday, and I told them, I was like, you know what, if this miscarriage is anything like the last one, I don't want to try and get on a plane and fly across the country when the miscarriage actually starts happening. So I ended up changing my flight. I think I just canceled it and decided I would book it again once I actually have the miscarriage, once it was done. So I think it was the next night. In the middle of the night, I just started feeling all these cramps again, and I was like in pain. I was trying to just like breathe through it, and then I couldn't just breathe through it anymore, and I somehow kind of crawled my way into the living room. And my mom was actually laying down on the couch. She had fell asleep on the couch, and I was like trying to call her because I was in so much pain and the contractions were so intense. And so finally I like worked up enough breath to say, "Mom." And so it kind of scared her, and I was like hunched over like this like little footrest thing on the floor. It's like a thing you can rest your feet on when you're on the couch. I was like hunched over, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong?" And I was telling her, I was like, "It's happening. It's happening." And so she really didn't know what was about to happen. Because if you've never had a miscarriage before and nobody's ever told you what it's like, you just don't know. So she's like looking at me like almost like a deer caught in the headlights, like, oh my gosh, like she can see I'm in a lot of pain, and she's just like, I don't know what to do for you. So she's calling my doctor, and the doctor is just telling her, okay, well, you know, just try and make her as comfortable as possible. If that's a heating mat, whatever you need to make her comfortable, because that's what's happening right now. She was like, just make sure that she's not bleeding so much that she's soaking through a pad in less than an hour or something like that. Because if that's the case, then you're hemorrhaging and you need to go to the hospital, because that's not the same thing. So they made her aware of that. So we just kind of sat there and waited it out. It was just like breathing through it. Like I'm telling you, it is like labor. So it happened. And I just kind of got up, went back to bed, cried myself to sleep. And yeah, that's what happened. I flew home a couple days later, and I was just done. And mind you, I flew home on our third wedding anniversary. And the only thing I could do was like stop and get a card for him, because I just didn't have it in me to do anything outside of that or anything more than that. I didn't care. And I feel bad for saying that, but I just did not have the energy to think about getting a gift for him. And at this point, I'm just like, I know this sounds bad, but I'm just like, what's the point? Like, I just don't even care anymore. Like, not that I didn't care about my marriage, but I don't have any energy. So I came home. I stopped and got in my car driving home from the airport, and then I came home, and he had gotten me a gift, which was the sweetest thing ever, an anniversary gift. It was a bracelet with the baby's birthstone on it. I should have put it on. I don't even know where I put it. I think it's in my jewelry box. So he gave me that, and I immediately broke down in tears and just cried into his arms, because that was the first time I had seen my husband since everything happened. So it was like 3 or 4 days after the miscarriage that I saw him finally. And I just cried and cried and cried into his arms, and it was just bad. And he just held me, and he was just like praying over me, and it was just, whew, it was heavy. It's been about 3 months now, almost, not quite, but 3 months now. So I can talk about it without like breaking down in tears. I still have my moments, trust me. Like the holidays were really rough. I cried on Christmas, before Christmas, probably after Christmas. I don't know. I've been crying a lot in December. Even though honestly, so initially I was a mess. I was to the point where I could barely function. Like I was just in so much like pain, like not physically, but just emotionally. I was just yeah. And that lasted about a week where I just could not, I was heavy. I just couldn't even function well. After that, it was less sadness and more anger. Like I was pissed, like at God. Like I was mad. Like don't want to talk to you kind of mad. Like I can't believe you would let this happen again. Because the first time I made an excuse for God. I said, okay, God, you let this happen because you knew me and him weren't going to stay together. Me and my ex-husband were not going to last. So okay, you saw what was best. Cool. This time, what's your excuse now, God? That's literally the question I have for him. What is your excuse for letting this happen to me again? I was so mad. I was like, I've done everything that I possibly could. I have prayed and prayed and prayed for 2 years. Actually, years before that, I was praying because I've always wanted to be a mom. So I've been praying for this child since I was a child. I've always wanted to be a mom. So I've been praying. I've been, tithing. I've been reading scripture. I have been sharing my journey in front of the entire world. I have fasted. We have done everything we could possibly do. We had faith. We prayed and prayed and prayed about how we can get pregnant because we had infertility challenges, and you open this door for IVF and we do the IVF, we get pregnant. I do all the things. I take all the shots. I take all the pills. I do all the doctor's appointments, the ultrasounds, everything I'm supposed to do. And then I still end up in the same position I was 6 years ago. Not quite the same position. I still have my husband. We're still together and we ain't going nowhere. But I felt like, what the hell? God, what are you doing? Like, why? I was so mad. Like, I'm sure I cussed at God. I'm just being honest. Like, I am not the person who does cute prayers when I'm desperate. Like, I'm going to tell you whatever's on my mind. He already know. Like, God knew that I was cussing him out in my brain a little bit. Not like cussing him out for real, but like, just I had some cuss words for him. Just pissed. Like, yeah. So I was angry for a while. And then I kind of just finally decided to pray, like to really pray, not just yell prayers, not yell stuff at him, but like just pray like, God, I'm not leaving you. Like, I'm not going to stop trusting you. I'm just mad at you right now. And even though I'm mad, what do you want? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, what could you possibly bring out of this situation? What good could you bring out of this situation? I mean, God, like, what possible good can you bring out of this? Like, that was my biggest question, and kind of still is my question. I am past being angry at God, I think I still have my moments, but I'm, for the most part, past being angry. I will not say I'm completely healed because, like I said, just a week and a half ago, I was crying on Christmas because I'm like, I'm supposed to have a big belly right now and be excited that this is our last Christmas, just the two of us. Like, I was having a meltdown. So I'm not going to say I'm not healed or past it or over it completely. I am functioning. I am okay for the most part. I still have some healing to do. I know. I am completely terrified about what's next because we do have 4 frozen embryos. So we are most likely going to be trying again soon. And I'm scared. I think I went into the first round of IVF with so much hope and just so much excitement that, okay, we're about to be parents. And now I am like, how the heck am I supposed to go through another round of IVF and not be a whole anxious, scared, terrified mess the entire time? So yeah, that's where we're at. I know that this is just another part of our journey. I know God promised us children. Not a child, but children. And right now it doesn't look all that great. But I still trust God. I know that he has a plan, and I know that he is going to execute his plan. His plans will always prevail. So whether I have to go back through IVF, kicking and screaming and anxious and terrified, or it's through adoption, or it's somehow some natural conception miracle baby, whatever the case may be, I know that God still has a plan, and I know that he has not left us. I know he's been with me this entire time, because there's no way that I would even be able to tell you guys what happened without having a meltdown if it wasn't for the Lord. The strength that God is giving me right now, I don't know where it's coming from. I really don't. I mean, I know it's from God, but I don't know how I have mustered up this kind of strength. I guess honestly the truth is I didn't muster up this strength. God is kind of carrying me at this point. So I am going to continue to share my story. I'm going to use my voice, my platform. I am going to bring awareness to this topic, because I think that the more people understand it, the more we can be compassionate for each other. We can be loving towards one another. We can be kind. We can pray for each other better. We can just be better to one another. We can just be better at loving one another if we understand what our brother or sister is going through. So yeah, I'm going to kind of leave this video here. It's kind of long. Oh, the last thing I want to say is the reason why I wanted to share my experiences between the first miscarriage and the second one is because the first miscarriage, I really didn't tell anybody. The only people that really knew were my sister, my mom, his parents, and my ex-husband. Nobody else really knew that we were pregnant or that we had a miscarriage. And the comparison to this time, I shared with the entire world that we were pregnant. And then I had to turn around, and a couple weeks later, literally 2 or 3 weeks after we made our pregnancy announcement, I had to share on social media that we lost our baby. So I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, which I can kind of put my little Instagram handle right here or something. If you follow me on Instagram, then you probably already knew that, but I had to turn around and share it with the world. And there was a big difference. And I know that honestly, some people would be like, man, the first way sounds better. But I honestly feel like the experience this time was so much better than it was the first time. The first time I had to kind of deal with it myself. Nobody, I only had I actually had like 2 friends who knew that I was pregnant as well. So I got, maybe one person sent me some flowers. I got a few people that said, oh, I'm sorry, but no one ever brought it back up again. It was just kind of like, well, it happened, it's over, whatever. This time, because I was so open about sharing what happened and the fact that we were pregnant and the fact that we had a miscarriage, the support that we received was just through the roof. Like, that was the one thing that I am so grateful for. God really surrounded us by some really awesome people that lifted us in prayer, people that sent us care packages, flowers, cards, just everything that people did to lift us up in a moment where we felt like lost and alone. God reminded us that we're never alone. So he used people to just remind us of his goodness. So I want to encourage people who have been through miscarriages. I'm not telling you to get on social media and tell the entire world you're dealing with infertility or miscarriage or whatever. I'm not saying that, but give people an opportunity to be there for you, because you should not have to go through this by yourself. You should not have to be depressed and sad and crying and frustrated and angry by yourself. If you want privacy surrounding your fertility and miscarriages and things like that, you have every right to do that. But I am saying that for me, the support was necessary. I needed people. I don't think that I could have gotten through a failed attempt at IVF without the people that I love cheering me on and picking me back up when I just felt like I had no more strength. So I'm encouraging you to at least tell the people that you know love you and that want to be there for you and that are good at being there for you in other ways. Tell them so that they can be there to support you in this season as well. So that's all for this video. I know I was a little bit long-winded today, but I feel like the story needed to be told and I can't really tell it in Cliff Notes. So if you would like to continue following along on my husband and I's journey to becoming parents, make sure you subscribe. I will be sharing more as it comes in the coming months and years. I hope that me sharing this video reminds somebody that they're not alone. You're not the only person who's been through this, and there are other people who understand what you're feeling and going through. So don't suffer by yourself. If you need to talk, or if you need prayer, anything like that, make sure that you send me a message or an email, and we can definitely do that. If I can be that person for you, please let me know. I just don't want anybody to have to go through this by themselves.